Hi everyone, welcome back to this new video on our channel, Young Pilgrims. My name is Anna, and in this video, we are going to learn about the Pentecostalism. The Pentecostalism has its history around a little more than 100 years. The followers of this movement declare that its beginning took place with the coming of the Ruach HaKodesh in Jerusalem. But history denies these affirmations, since if we consider the characteristics of the Pentecostal movement in general and the outpouring of the Ruach HaKodesh, we can see the differences between these two. I was raised in a Pentecostal movement, and because of this, I witnessed and I experienced extrasensory manifestations such as the shaking of the body and the hands, the vomiting, the yelling, the speaking in weird languages. In other words, very crazy, very questionable, very shocking actions that take place in this movement. Now, if we go to the Bible and read in Acts 2 verses 1 through 13, the word tells us what truly happened that day. In chapter 2 verse 1, it says, and arriving on the day of Pentecost. In this first portion of this verse, we see that this word is incorrect. And in reality, the historical context of Israel says that the reason why they were all gathered in the temple of Jerusalem was because of the Feast of the Weeks, or as we know it as Shavuot, where the word spoken by Yeshua is fulfilled when he prophesies to the believers about the coming of the Ruach and tells them to stay in Jerusalem and to remain united, as we read in John 16 verse 7. Nevertheless, I tell you the truth, if it is to your advantage that I go away, for if I do not go away, the Comforter will not come to you. But if I go, I will send him to you. So, we see that the Feast of the Weeks, the promise of the outpouring of the Ruach is fulfilled. If we continue to read Acts 2 verses 5 through 12, we notice that the tongues that are poured out that day are languages dominated by the people of each represented nation. So, the differences between speaking in human languages and extrasensory manifestations are huge. Now, you may ask yourself, how did this movement start in the first place? Well, this movement actually started off by a man named Charles Fox Farnham, who was an American preacher and evangelist. It is not sure when, but by the year 1900, Charles was the first to identify tongues as the Bible evidence of spirit baptism. Later on, Charles desired to be included in the rapture, and this led him to search for uninformed evidence of the spirit baptism. And he would define its purpose as an endowment with power for service. He believed that the tongue that were spoken by the baptized were human languages. So, because of this belief that he had, the ministers took in action Charles' belief and thought that they didn't need to learn any foreign language. And when they practiced this belief of his, they realized that it was a lie and that it wasn't true. And well, because of this lie, because of this belief of Charles that was a lie, it caused him to lose followers. But in October of the year 1900, Charles built a school named Bethel Bible College, which was established in Tupelo, which later on the local press started calling Charles's school the Tower of Babel, which this obviously led to his fellow students calling him fake. And once again, this caused him to lose followers. In the year 1903, he went to El Dorado Springs, where he went to El Dorado Springs in Missouri to preach about Christ's healing power. And in this event, Mary Arthur attended. And she claimed that she had been healed by Charles' ministry. Later on, in winter of 1903 and 1904, Mary Arthur and her husband invited Charles to preach his message. Then, in January, the Joplin, Missouri News Herald reported that 10,000 people had been healed and 300 had claimed conservation. And well, all of this was done by Charles Fox Farnham. Another person that was part of this movement was Joseph William Seymour, who was a student of Charles Fox Farnham. Williams and Charles believed that speaking in tongues was a sign of receiving the baptism in the Holy Spirit. In 1906, William went to preach the Pentecostal message in LA, where he sparked the Azusa Street Revival, which was an influential event in the rise of the Pentecostal and charismatic movements. And well, Charles was in the process of developing the revival into a bigger organization called Apostolic Faith Movement, which later on was defeated by power struggles, along with other ministers such as Florence Crawford and William Howard Durham, which this obviously damaged his unity of the early Pentecostal movement and decreased Seymour's influence. And now, to justify the use of strange tongues with which they speak on their ecstasy, they rely on 1 Corinthians 13 verse 1, which says, "If I speak human and angelic tongues but have no love, I have become like clanging metal and clanging cymbal." And this is where they emphasize angelic tongues. But if we took this word to its Hebrew translation, it says that the word for angelic is angelos, that is to bring a messenger, especially an angel. Then, as we see with the correct understanding in this verse, it does not tell us that there are two types of languages, but rather clarifies that if we had the gift of speaking human languages, or if we brought an angelic message without love, we would be nothing. The majority of religions take these verses out of context and they adapt it into a human opinion. Another verse on which they base their doctrines in is Isaiah 28 verse 11, and it says, for with stammering lips and another tongue will he speak to his people. From this verse, they say that according to when a believer goes into ecstasy, he experiences a type of language of stammering or indescribable groans. They say that it is not that easy to understand, but that only God can understand, but only God can understand the type of communication between God and men, which again, this is another mistake of theirs. And well, in conclusion, we saw the base. In conclusion, we have seen the base verses of their doctrines and have seen that they are wrong about their beliefs. History does not endorse its existence since the 1st century. Its practices are dangerous for mankind, which is very similar to the Kundalini movement. Now, us as followers and believers of the biblical scriptures, we should stay away from these practices because the Eternal loathes these things. And well, that is all for this video. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up. If you have any questions, any comments, or any suggestions for other youth themes that we should make, or another youth theme or other youth theme videos that we should make sure to put them down below in the comment section, and we will be checking them. Thank you for your time, and have an amazing night or day or afternoon, depending on the time that you're watching this. And may the Eternal Father keep on blessing you.